Hi guys, welcome, Tech here, and I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to have two build guides for the Endless Delirium. They're going to be essentially the same thing, even though two completely different guides for it. I'm going to have a Blade Vortex as well as a Cyclone guide, which will both be further in this video. I'm going to break them down into chapters, and then I'm also going to go over some Delirium Mechanics, so you kind of understand exactly what you're walking into with Delirium, because it is a little on the complicated side. Before we get started, if you would please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It does really help me grow, and I do genuinely appreciate it. Let's get into the Delirium Mechanics. Delirium scales based on flat damage. If you're doing a pure elemental damage build, or a pure physical attack build, or whatever, it's going to start off low and then it gradually higher the more delirious it is, up to 96% at 100% delirium. So we're going to talk about some ways to circumvent that. That way you don't have to have crazy high damage to be able to do just normal stuff throughout the league, because there are some ways to circumvent that, which is a good thing. Another note is that basically anything that can comfortably delve in around depth 400 should be perfectly fine for 100% delirious. It is a very similar mechanic. The only difference is the corpse explosions are prevented by delirium, where they are not prevented by delve. So just something to keep in mind. So scaling Impulsa, Herald of Ice, as the next Gentle Touch, like things of that nature aren't very good. There's gonna be these red balls. Oh, that's a little off. It's where my camera is. That doesn't help you any. Okay. So there's this little, they're clumped together. It works out great. So there's these little red balls and there's these little white things. And then they sometimes are clumped together. The red balls are like a heat-seeking bomb that's gonna come out and track you down, and it's going to attempt to kill you. If you accidentally trigger one of those, you can essentially jet out of the area because they are range limited. So you can basically outrange them. And then that way you don't have to worry about that particular portion, and you can kind of just move forward with your life. The white ones, however, are very good because they give you extra monsters to kill, which means more drops, which is fantastic. And so we want the white ones. We don't want the red ones. So something to keep in mind. The other thing is, if you're having a very hard time differentiating the two, because I know I did in Delirium League and have since massively turned up the gamma on my monitor for playing this game specifically. You need to be able to see the details, and everything is just shades of gray, which makes it very hard naturally on your eyes to kind of figure out what's going on. So feel free to crank that gamma up. It will make your life a little bit easier, even though it is going to be a little annoying that you're going to be basically looking at gray the entire time you're playing this league. Bare bones version of Delve, or I'm sorry, of Delve. Delirium. Come on now. Okay, so that's the basic version of Delirium. Now, as far as the more complicated side, there's a whole bunch of Delirium mobs, and it would take me a while to go through all that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to put a link down to the Delirium modifiers, if that's something that you're interested in learning a little bit more about. Kind of a tip and trick regarding Delirium itself. There is, I'm not sure if it's going to tell us the percent delirious or not in the, like if you hit tab and bring up the zone info. If it does, and you're at a very high percent delirious, and you have a boss that you need to kill, I would suggest redoing that zone if you want to have a good experience. Because if you're trying to kill like 100% delirious Brutus at level 8, you're going to have a bad time. Like, it's not going to go well. You're probably not going to kill him, and it's going to be very, very frustrating. However, if you get a 1% delirious Brutus at level 8, it's a super easy time, and you're gonna love killing it because it's so easy. Because of how they've done previously, is it is dedicated to that zone, not dedicated to all zones. So you should be able to just redo that zone specifically, easier version of whatever mob encounter you have to kill. Now, if it's not a boss fight, I would just run through the zone as quickly as possible. Do what you need to do, get out of it. And then let's go over our first build, which was the one I'll do more in depth, which is going to be Blade Vortex. Basically, what we're going to be doing is Poison Assassin BV. The reason we are doing Poison Assassin is because Poison Assassin lets us use Plague Bear. One of the interesting things about Plague Bear is it bypasses all flat mitigation from Delirium. So it gives us a guaranteed way of dealing a lot of damage if it is 100% delirious that we need to kill. The only downside is you do have to scale it up and ramp up the poison stacks. The best way I have found to do that is through Blade Vortex, even though there's also a Cyclone version of this that we'll cover as well. The trees are essentially identical through the first 60 points or so, and then they're going to diverge. Basically, one is going to go into more attack stuff, the other is going to go into more spell stuff, for very obvious reasons. The reason I'm going to leave start the Blade Vortex version is it just has a much better ramp, and I don't mind the clunkiness of Blade Vortex, even though I know some people do, which is why I'm also making a Cyclone version. That way, if you don't want to deal with the clunkiness of Blade Vortex, you don't have to. I will kind of just forewarn you. Blade Vortex is going to have a way better boss damage. Clone will have better clear once you get it going. Blade Vortex's clear is also pretty good, especially considering we're not going to have like all the pops and stuff. Blade Vortex really excels because we can keep the Plague Bear up so much of the time that you're basically always going to have Plague Bear, which is very, very good for being able to clear fast and efficiently in Delirium. Blade Vortex, even though it's more clunky, will give you probably a generally better experience. The other cool thing about both of these is if you wanted to later on, like once you get more gear, transition into a Forbidden Rite cast on crit build, you can do that, and I will have a very simplified version of that below. It is by no means a masterpiece. That is not really my forte, but it is something that you can transition into if you would like to really get that high power level and really start cutting through Delirium and not having to worry about like trying to reroll to an aura stacker or to level as an aura stacker, which would be absolutely miserable. Aura stackers are amazing for Delirium, but you need to get to like level 96, 97 before they're good. Well, there's not really a point in doing that for a race event. All you really care about, you don't really care about the damage of Blade Vortex at all. I am scaling it on this, so it's on my 6th link. You can do it kind of either way. You can either scale it on your 6th link, or you can scale the Agony Crawler on the 6th link. The Agony Crawler will do more damage. The Agony Crawler rings and stuff, like you can really get pretty beefy damage out of him. If you are gonna go down to a 4 link, you're probably gonna wanna go with just something like Unleashed, Increased Critical Strike, Support, and Inspiration. That way you're maximizing your crit chance, and then you can just run like a Diamond Flask or whatever to get you all the way up. Basically, I've tested like 10 different builds, and the Poison is by far the best mechanic I have found as far as not requiring a lot to get going and having a good source of like pure true damage that doesn't have to worry about the Delirium mechanic negating you. So you don't have to worry about, oh, I don't have crazy damage yet, I can't do this. Our Plague Bear stacks, which is this icon right here, is our Plague Bear, and you'll see that it's going to get filled up and tick down, and you just kind of do that back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But like one pack in and we're already back to full. Now, as you level the gem up, it does get higher, but it should always be like 1 to 2 pack with Blade Vortex, and you should be full. Unless you're just like one-shotting everything, then it may take you a couple of packs if your damage gets that high. Let's move on to the Cyclone version. Be an idea of the Cyclone version. As you can see, it's not going to ramp up the Plague Bear nearly as fast. It takes probably about 4 to 5 times longer to get the same amount of Plague Bear, which is an actual problem. You'll also notice that the boss damage, or the like really tanky stuff damage on this, is substantially worse than Blade Vortex, and that's just because of the way Cyclone works. You're not getting a lot of damage off of the hits. It's just not as effective overall, but it is way easier to play, and you get the crazy elusive percentage. Like, you're gonna be at like 250% elusive or very close to it once like fully scaled and in-game gear. So 257 elusive, which is fantastic for your mobility. You can really like zip, but elusive does fall off, which is also important to know that elusive is going to scale off. You can see I basically used the exact same setup in the last video, except for this one has a Gemini Claw. The reason we are using a Gemini Claw Gemini Claw gives you mana back on hit, which is very, very important for sustaining your Cyclone once you go this route, especially if you don't have mana reduction channeling skills. Cyclone should be like around 6 cost, so you need a max roll, which is 3, and a mid roll, which is 2, to get it where Cyclone is free. Now, if you do get it where Cyclone is free, don't have to worry about using a Gemini Claw. You claw or dagger you would prefer. It's taking substantially longer to really ramp up the Plague Bearer. And then once we get Plague Bearer going, it's fine and it's clearing just fine, but it does take a little while to get it ramped up. This was my concern with Cyclone. Its damage is not good at all outside of Plague Bearer, which also means less poison being applied. And then once you add the flat into it, like Cyclone really gets devastated by the flat. Is if you do decide that you want to transition into the, like, especially if you're playing the Cyclone version and you want to transition into the CI Forbidden Rite cast on crit version of this build, one of the things that you're going to really want to focus on is your effective trigger rate and global cooldown recovery. You want those to match your basically like your hits per second, which for most skills is triggered off of attack speed. You can actually pull up the calcs in Path of Building, and I'll show you how to do that once we go to Path of Building. So you can, and it'll tell you like how to get to your next breakpoint. You're more locked in place with Cyclone than you are with Blade Vortex. Then let's hop on over to PoB, our Blade Vortex, Path of Building. So both builds are essentially the exact same to this, is these 3 nodes right here. If you're gonna go Cyclone, you want these attack nodes. If you're gonna go Blade Vortex, you want these top. So the first 60 points. Then once we break out of here, you're gonna notice it's gonna change up quite a bit. Blade Vortex version is gonna come up here and get the spell crit stuff and the poison crit stuff, whereas the Cyclone version is going to get more of this stuff, accuracy stuff. This one obviously doesn't need accuracy, but we do want like poison mastery. So this one's going to get poison mastery up here. The Cyclone version is going to get poison mastery down here. Then you're going to hit the pure BV. Then the notes section is pretty robust for this. So you'll see that there is a leveling section, the Delirium Scaling section. There's also the CI transition and also explaining trigger and attack speed. But this kind of gives you what gems you're going to want to pick up when. With Blade Vortex, you don't need these 2 gems. You can also just run increased critical strike support. This is just if you want the most pure damage possible, and if you have a 4-link. If you don't have a 4-link, I would just run like Blade Vortex, increased critical strike support, and chance. You also don't have to get multiple trap support here, but it is nice with explosive trap because you're probably going to want to use both of those for a little while until your Herald of Agony crawler really starts picking up and you have good support gems for it. Then you're probably going to want to fall off of that. Our concern. If we go over here and we select this one, it will give us our trigger rate, and it'll give you the math formula right here to the right. This is the math formula for how to calculate your trigger rate and how many times you're triggering per second. It will also tell you your next breakpoint right here. You need this much percent to hit your next breakpoint. You can get cooldown recovery on several pieces of gear. Belts and boots are the easiest to get it on. That's if you want to min-max more on the Forbidden Rite side of things. It does significantly increase your DPS if you do that, because basically if your trigger rate is lower than what you're attacking at or vice versa, you're essentially losing DPS. So you can go this route if you're on the don't want to scale the skill effect duration, and then you can go this route if you are going to scale the skill effect duration. You can easily fix either of these with gear as far as the different versions here. And then we also have the Cyclone base. This is not a final or a min-maxed build at all. I want to be very, very clear about that. This is just me throwing something together in case this is something that tickles your fancy that you would want to do, to just give you a generic idea. BV is the actual focus. Slightly less damage, slightly less annoying, slightly more damage, slightly more annoying. Personal preference there. As far as the gear, it's pretty basic gear. I didn't want to go too hard on the min-maxing. These 2 items are really, really good and hard to beat. These 2 items are not that good. I just had them. Take that for what you will. Cold Iron Point, it's nice. So scales your damage very, very. It's not the end of the world. and you could easily craft. So let's say we get spell damage and we get plus to fizz. We're not going to put in, just to give you an idea, it's about the same. So cold iron point, completely replaceable in this instance. If you want to craft a rare, you don't have to. You can just get a cold iron point. It's perfectly fine. It's not a huge damage difference. Now, you can make it a huge damage difference if you get a +2 and a really high crit chance to spells. So if you crank this spell crit up, it gets significantly better. Getting +2 instead of a +1 will also be a big thing. You can also dual wield. This is where cold iron point gets absurd and where it's going to kind of overtake these two. But if you want to play it safer, you can absolutely do it that way. Then as far as calcs, I didn't check anything. You can put it as Cirrus, doesn't change a whole lot of things, modifiers, all that kind of stuff. If you wait for maximum seals, it is significantly smoother on your playstyle. Do some charges so you can see the damage will get higher. Then if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask. If you are struggling with this build, feel free to email me your pace bin, and you may comment on the video just so I know to check my email for it, and I'll try to help you out and see if we can't fix it for you. All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate you for tuning in, and I hope you are looking forward to Delirium as much as I am. And if you would, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really does help me out. It really does help the channel grow, and I greatly appreciate it. And I hope you have an excellent rest of your day.